Police officers of Reddit, what's the craziest situation you've been in? Definitely the time that an older, mentally ill woman tried to burn her house down because she believed that was the only way to disarm the atom bomb in her attic. I got her to walk with me to my car and get in the back by telling her it was the only place she'd be safe. When I got in and started driving, she started yelling that I couldn't take her to jail because she hadn't done anything wrong. I calmly informed her that we were going to the hospital, which prompted even louder yelling of, "I'm not crazy." I replied, "I don't think you're crazy." She screamed, "Then why are you taking me to the hospital?" I told her, "Well, you were next to that atom bomb, right? We gotta get you checked for radiation poisoning." Her eyes got wide and she said, "Oh shout. I didn't think about that, you better hurry." Attended a structural fire in a downtown high-rise. Was tasked with evacuating local residents in case the building collapsed. Third house I went to, the guy answers in a full bunny suit with gas mask propped up in his head. English wasn't his first language, and as I was trying to communicate that he needed to evacuate, it became clear he was running a meth lab inside. Arrested Asian Walter White, and then had to sit in the shadow of the structure fire keeping eyes on the house while waiting for clear, clandestine lab team to show up. In that time fire trucks basically surrounded my vehicle, so I couldn't move it, even after clear team moved in. Walter had his lawyer call on my PC, and it was about 10 hours before we could head back to cells. I've never had to piss so badly in my life. Bunny suit is Canadian slang for a NBC suit. Why did you ruin this for me? The story painted a much better picture in my mind when I was imagining a pink fluffy bunny suit with floppy ears. My dad friend who is a cop in NC told me that some teen tried to steal an electric shopping cart from Target with a freak ton of shout in it and tried to outrun the cops, but the cart only went 5 miles per hour for like 25 meters and the battery died. The cop just asked him to push the cart back since it died and return the stolen items. Did a stop on a pretty obvious dope car. Driver is tweaking on meth. Passenger also tweaking, and is a female that weighs 95 pounds, while being 5 feet 8 or so. She looked like a concentration camp victim. She's offering to provide oral services in exchange for her release. Obviously I decline. Guy in the back appears to be asleep. I get his ID from the tweaking driver as my backup arrives. We get all three out. I can see needles all over the car. The guy in the back wakes up and gets out. Dispatch gives us returns, letting us know the back passenger has a parole violation. He was released early from prison IYDK for felon in possession of a firearm. The dispatcher was supposed to warn us before giving the return out loud over the radio, but didn't in this case. Old dude stands up and reaches in his waistband. I see this happening in slow motion and realize it's about to get real. My partner swings from around the other side of the vehicle where he was talking to one of the other suspects. I start to yell gun in time for my partner to straight up linabooker this dude, which we got into cuffs. Had a .45 in the waistband. I went home and hugged my son, who was 1 at the time. My uncle was called to a scene where there was a raccoon hit by a car but was still alive and making a ton of noise in a residential area. He got there with his cruiser and all they can do is finish the job. He went over it with his cruiser again. After a second it began crying out again. So he went over it a second time. Same shout. Still crying out, and at this point, he's feeling freaking awful. So he goes over it a third time and gets out and checks it out. The raccoon was finally dead. Then he hears someone yell from a window across the street, "I think you got it that time." My uncle was horrified and worried he'd get into trouble because I believe the correct action is to use your gun, but he didn't want to have to fill out the paperwork and clean his weapon for a small animal roadkill call. Showed up to a call once about a baby crying non-stop for hours and no sign of an adult being home. We went into the house and I followed the sound of the crying baby upstairs to find an 18-month-old with her arms duct taped to her crib. I undid the duct tape, and it was obvious this was not the first time it had happened. I brought the child downstairs and outside. The mom was walking up the sidewalk of the housing unit and flipped shut on me. I handed the child off to a patrol and cuffed her. It was the most satisfying clicking of handcuffs I had ever heard. Edit. This happened when I was in the Army as an MP. The father of the child was deployed at the time. From what I heard, he was granted permission to return home and take custody of the child. They got a divorce and I believe he won custody. I don't know what happened to her as far as a sentencing or jail time. First time my brother arrested someone was really funny. He and his training officer were working the graveyard shift and got a call for suspicious activity at a house. They arrive and the homie Awa says there is someone sneaking around his house that shouldn't be there. So they start looking around with their flashlights. Grass is really overgrown in the backyard and my brother noticed one of those Fisher-Price kids car, yellow and red plastic car, moving on its own. They found their guy, naked and half trying to hide under the kid's toy and crawl away. Training officer says, well, he's yours rookie, had my brother cuff him. Guy didn't want to go to jail and put up a naked fight and take the guy to jail. A guy on a sports team I play in is a drug squad cop and told us the following story. They had staked out a meth lab house for a while and surveilled the house with pinhole cameras for some time. They'd noticed that the occupants were becoming increasingly erratic. Someone senior suggested it was due to them not replacing the filters in their protective masks. Anyway, at some stage they decide it's time to go in. So tactical enter and grab all the guys and clear the rooms. Then a chemical team go in to make sure everything is safe. Eventually my mate and his team go in to collect evidence with a few young uniforms to help. The house is a bit of a shambles but nothing too unexpected until one of the uniforms picks up a large rubber dildo and starts playing around with it in front of everybody. The senior then tells him, you know that, while reviewing all the footage on this place we never saw any women entering or leaving this house. And why are you the only one not wearing gloves? My mom has been a police officer for quite some time now, over 10 years I guess, and she had this habit of giving her personal phone number for emergencies. One time, some crazy woman called her telling her that she keeps seeing green orbs on the wall and that the government wants to expose her to radiation so the aliens could take her. Went to a job where a guy was smashing up a garage and putting his fist through a window to get into a house. There was also reports of a bit of blood. Me and my offside a rock and there is this guy, bit of blood on him, and screwdriver in hand. We couldn't properly see the screwdriver and in the early morning light, it looked like a knife. So my partner calls knife, I reach for my gun, then the guy quickly says it's a screwdriver, puts it away, hands up. We arrest him for criminal damage and then we ask the question, what's going on? Well, this guy and a female friend were playing board games all night and drinking and end up playing the Firefly board game. He starts acting douchey her words and kicks him out of the house after an argument erupts of dice rolling. He smashes a window, cuts his hand up, smashes the garage door to get his car out. Then we arrive, nearly drawing our guns over a freaking board game argument. TLDR, we nearly shot some guy over a board game. My partner and I once received a call out about an escaped swan. Let me tell you we definitely did not have any luck catching it. I know a guy who was a cop in Texas when I was in middle school. He told me about this one time this woman called 911 because her house was haunted. He proceeded to put handcuffs on an invisible ghost and acted like he was putting it in the police car. Police officers, what was the craziest situation you've been in? Please comment below. Please like this video and subscribe.